everyone who's joining in, and thank you for being with us here today. My name is Nupur, and I'm from Kocharya, and I'm joined by two of our lovely alums and two of our lovely coaches, Giridhar and Meenakshi. Please let us know in the chat box where you're joining in from, and I'm hoping that Yamini is also going to join in soon, and she's going to be moderating the chat box for all of us. I don't see any messages, so oh, wonderful. I see messages. That means it's working. Yay.
Yes.
Amazing. Giridhar, where are you joining from? And Meenakshi, where are you joining from?
I'm joining from Chennai, Nupur.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I'm joining from Virginia in the US.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's
I'm
9 a.m.
currently
9 a.m. my time.
Oh, good morning to you. So we have
Yes,
people from Kolkata, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Dubai,
yeah, and I saw
Boston,
someone from Victoria, Canada. That's really early for them.
Malaysia.
Germany, Finland. This is wonderful.
So I know everyone's really excited about this topic, and so I'll quickly introduce the topic. I'll quickly introduce our lovely coaches today, and well, there can be so much that we can talk about this topic because I think coaches are always going to need more information when it comes to the business side of coaching, and I have to say that one thing we've noticed that it is one of the most recommended topics when it comes to what people want to hear. And while Coach Arya has focused quite a bit on the being of the coach today, we thought why not shift the lens and focus more on the business side of coaching. And um, yeah, and we have Giridhar, who's recently started his own company, and I'll just quickly introduce him. So Giridhar brings a wealth of experience and expertise, and he has an impressive career spanning nearly 3 decades in the corporate sector. And he's worked with organizations such as Godrej and Boys, Citibank, Avia Life Insurance, Standard Chartered Bank. Giridhar's journey in corporate world has been dynamic, with a remarkable 18 years spent on the business side before making a strategic transition into global investment operation role. Over the course of his illustrious career, he has effectively managed teams across multiple countries, showcasing his hand-on experience in leading individuals from various cultural backgrounds. And what has set Giridhar apart is not just his extensive corporate background, but also his passion for developing leaders and contributing to their growth. And this dedication is what has led him to uh, pursuing coaching in 2021. He completed his PCC, and he also has the senior practitioner credentialing from the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, which is the AMCC. And this year, Giridhar left his corporate role to establish his own firm, Reframing Visions, focused on the executive and leadership coaching. His firm reflects his commitment to bring positive transformation to individuals and organizations. So, welcome, Giridhar, and we're sure that you're going to share so much information today. And now let's talk a bit about Meenakshi. Meenakshi comes with a 25-year portfolio career spanning in people, product, and technology development, both in India and the US. Her interdisciplinary career is defined by cross-functional leadership roles in multilingual and multicultural environments. Between her immigrant experience and having successfully navigated at least 3 different career pivots, Meenakshi has an insider perspective on all things changes and transition. She also has a deep understanding of a startup space from a leadership and teamwork perspective. Meenakshi started North Star Solutions and Services LLC in August 2019, where she partners with CXOs and their organizations in unpacking leadership at the messy middle to help their mid-level leaders lead self, people, change with intention, influence, and impact. She is invested in supporting women in technology, particularly those who speak English as an additional language in their leadership development journeys. She's based in Virginia, US, and serves clients globally. We are so happy to have you here, Meenakshi, and we are so happy to have both of you here. And I'm going to leave the space to both of you. And hopefully, I will listen to you and come back later with my own questions. So, thank you so much, and see you all later.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nupur, for the kind introduction and for setting all this up. So, Girdhar, are we ready to kick it off?
Yes, Meenakshi, yes, we can.
All right. Wonderful. And again, I know the people are still joining us. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. And thank you for taking time, and particularly during the holiday season, to be here with us. We really appreciate it. And if you have questions, keep them coming in the chat, and then we'll pick them up throughout the conversation. So I wanted to start us off today, Girdhar, with your experience. You quit your full-time job and turned into a full-time coach.
Yeah.
How did that come?
Yeah, I think this is something I've been thinking, Meenakshi, for some time, right? I'm 3 decades in the corporate sector across multiple organizations, a lot of learning, enjoyed every single role I did. But one thing is when you start working for many years in the corporate sector, you tend to grow within them. And as you move higher in the hierarchy, it's all about managing people. And that's what that's what is the most important. And that's where I started realizing maybe that's an interest I'd like to pursue, uh, develop. And I did have the opportunity of being coached across 3 journeys, 3 different coaches, and I started liking the approach. Then the thinking was, why not explore this as a career? And that's what led me to, right? I think like Nupur mentioned intro, I did my PCC in 2021, got certified as a PCC 2021. And I think every single day, every single month since then has been exciting.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
But then,
And then,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, but then I was looking at your background, what Nupur was saying, right? You manage consulting and coaching together. So how do you manage to straddle across both?
Hmm. It's more out of, you know how they say you have to do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. So I'm in that space right now.
Right.
So for me, I think my journey into coaching is quite accidental. So I'm a bit of an accidental coach. And unlike you, I did not have the benefit of having coaching while I was working full time. But I've done a lot of coaching, which I realized later on that what I was doing for my team and nurturing and building my team was really coaching and a fair bit of mentoring as well. And I think for me, the basics of coaching really fell into place with the different kinds of jobs and careers that I've had. So the closest for me was I'm a trained ESL teacher, English as a second language teacher, and the philosophy or the training methodology that I was trained in is called the communicative approach to language learning, where the focus is there's absolutely no translation allowed.
Okay.
So you learn the language like somebody would learn, a child would learn a language. So you start with listening and then speaking and then reading and writing. And so several of the principles I found when I was going through coach training at Coach Arya, I found there were a lot of similarities. And also my tech experience, I'm an agile practitioner, I'm an agile coach as well. So several of the Scrum fundamentals and all that. So there were a lot of parallels for me in coaching that I discovered. So it was an easy switch, I would say. And similar to you, I think what I found at the end of being in the corporate space and then having transitioned from the Indian corporate world to the US, that I realized that most problems are people problems, even in the tech world. And the approach that coaching helps us to implement, I think that's one of the most, to me, coaching is one of the most impactful conversations, impactful human interactions. And so that's how the transition was shaped for me. So when I set up North Star Solutions and Services, my intention was to work in the agile transformation space and support small to medium-sized tech companies that were looking at getting into adopting agile ways of working, particularly Scrum and Kanban. And it quickly morphed into, then I discovered Coach Arya, and then it quickly morphed into professional and leadership coaching. So one of the main reasons why I still do a lot of consulting work and subcontracting work is, one is that's, and we're going to get into that a little bit later in the conversation, but that's something that helps me stay funded to do what I want to do through North Star. So it's some bit of steady income that comes through. So that's another thing I learned as I left the corporate life behind, is the importance of diversifying our sources of income. So as a solopreneur, as somebody with no industry godfathers or godmothers, I had to find ways in which I could stay self-funded. And so that's how I do coaching. That's why I do consulting. And the second reason is that consulting work helps me stay in touch with industry, especially the tech industry. In my case, I do consulting work in the healthcare technology implementation space. And it helps me stay in touch with industry, because ultimately those people that I work with, the kinds of people that I work with, and the kinds of organizations that I support, those are my intended client audience for my coaching and leadership development work. So it helps me stay connected with industry, so that the coaching work that I do is informed by reality and I'm not out there. So that's how it's been for me.
Yeah, I think interesting you mentioned about combining consulting and coaching, right? How one feeds the other, both in terms of your clientele as well as having a good revenue stream as well. I'm sure we'll talk about it as we progress. But one thing that struck me was when you talked about focusing on small and medium enterprises. You have a very clear segmentation plan in place where you know where to go behind, not the very
Yeah.
large ones, but you're very
Yeah.
clear who are the people who are willing to partner with you with your offerings. Would like to expand on that?
Yeah, certainly. So everything for me has been iterative. Okay, so I applied all the principles of agile software and product development to how I set up my business. And the practical reason for not going after large companies, there's a couple. One is large companies they have very set procurement processes in place. And if they're multinationals, then even if the local geographies have autonomy on the budgets, sometimes it's not the case. So they have very set, very stringent procurement channels, which means that you have to get in on their supplier list first before you're able to do any work. And for someone like me, in the American context, someone like me who looks like me, as in I'm not white and I'm not a local, it's been difficult to break into that for me. The second reason, I also found that large organizations usually have a very fairly to an extremely robust leadership development L&D function, and they invest heavily in building in-house content and in-house training and coaching for their employees. So because they have a lot of resources that they can invest in. So those are the two reasons why I chose not to go after big companies. And for me, because most of my career has been in small and medium companies, and I've worked throughout my career, I've worked very closely with business owners across industries. And so I have more experience, and I would say the empathy comes more easily there, because I know exactly what the nature of the problems are. And I find that small and medium businesses they're more flexible, they're more agile by way of, as a function of how they are structured. And I do want to mention one thing here is that I always try to message my intended audience, my buyer is my ideal buyer is a CTO, a CDO, a chief technology officer, a chief digital or data officer, or a chief information officer of a small to medium sized company. They don't have to be tech companies themselves, but they use technology in one way, shape, or form. So that's my audience. So my route is not to go through HR or L&D, but to go directly to the functional leadership. And I've met with mixed success. So that's why I focus on the small and medium and not the large.
I think a good approach in terms of looking at the functional side of it rather than only HR. Right.
And but I know you have I know when we spoke earlier, you have a different approach. Do you want to talk about it now or later?
Yeah, I think we talk about it in the sense both approaches work, Meenakshi, right? You spoke
Mm,
about large organizations where they invest internally in terms of training people. But the trend in the last few years also with these companies are try and outsource most of these
yeah.
to third-party providers, vendors, and that's where coaches, trainers, leadership development workshops, seminars, all these come in.
Mm,
Make it lean with the organizations. And that's why the dependency on external service providers increase. So while the decisions could still be taken by the business in terms of the kind of coach they want for their specific functions, but a lot of focus on the L&D and the HR folks in terms of trying to see how they onboard people onto their platform. I think that
mm,
also is parallel with this.
yes, yes. Um, sort of I wanted to mention that also platforms like BetterUp and Ezra and all of these, they have created opportunities for folks like us who are independent coaches
Yeah,
to get better access, without having to pay for the marketing and all that. Of course,
right.
it's reflected in the hourly rate, but it's a great opportunity as well to get that diversity of clients.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a welcome move for most of the new coaches who are coming in, because one, it guarantees them a certain number of clients, a certain number of engagements through the weeks and the months. And when somebody starts off, that's a nice opportunity for people to get in. And as they get more seasoned, more experienced, they're more confident about acquiring their own clients. That's when they try to spin off on their own, trying to see how they get their own
Yeah,
clients, right? I mean, yes, it does help for a startup coach to look at these platforms as well.
absolutely. Absolutely. Before I get into the next question, I did want to also say it out loud here, that the our intention here is to just share our experience. So this is things that work for us, Giridhar and I, and things that didn't work for us, and we would invite you to consider those as pointers for what it's worth for you. But you have to remember to look at your own market, the geography that you're in, the kind of business you have, what's the virtual versus in-person split and things like that, as you take into account what we're sharing. So I just want to put that out there. So I definitely don't consider myself an expert in anything. I'm a practitioner and I'm learning this along the way. And I'm trying to also make use of my business school degree here as I run my own practice. So yeah, so, Giridhar, as we step along into the conversation, um, I want us to shift towards talking about the different steps in setting up a successful coaching practice, right? So, what are some steps that you took into account as you started reframing visions?
Okay. See, when somebody gets into coaching as a full-time profession, right? I categorize them into two or three buckets. One, somebody who's working full-time in a corporate setup or some other setup, and coaching is a passion. This is more
Mm,
of trying to pursue a passion hobby. We don't know how it's going to develop in the future. So here, the revenue is not critical. It's about pursuing the interest, passion becomes more important.
yep,
The second is people who established trainers, people who established consultants, people like you, who also try and add another product offering, which is coaching, right? And this goes in terms of a wider basket of offering to clients, and it obviously helps in terms of attracting and retaining clients. The third is people who are focused only on coaching as a primary revenue generator, right? So these are three buckets. Possibly today I'm the third bucket. I don't know, tomorrow probably I'll try and expand it into something else, but today I'm the third bucket where I focus on coaching.
yeah,
And for this, it's almost like setting up a new venture. And the way I see it is need to have a business plan, and that's what we do in setting up businesses, projects, etc. Have a business plan where you start thinking about how your revenue stream is going to be, who are your target clients, what your acquisition strategy, what's your pricing mechanism,
yep,
what platforms are you going to offer, how are you going to promote them, right? How to
mm,
engage. I think you cover almost everything in this, and that's what you need to explore in terms of maximizing your output from each of these. And it's great learning as you go on. Uh,
yeah,
it's slightly different than what you want to do otherwise. So the challenge here is about staying grounded, because in a corporate setup, you are monitored by somebody, by the organization, by somebody senior. Here you're on your own. So it's very easy to lose focus because you are accountable to yourself, nobody else, right? How do you keep yourself within the guardrails and start progressing ahead? I think that's the biggest step one needs to take. But otherwise, a good, strong business plan, which will take a long time to actually work on. And that's something that's critical.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. And as you were sharing the model, the mental model sort of that came up for me is like, like they say, the 4 Ps of marketing. So
Right.
there are like 3 or 4 Ps that came up for me. One is the product, like what is it that you want to sell? And even before that, start with your purpose, like you said.
Yeah.
So what is your purpose? And depending on which of the 3 buckets you're in,
Right.
and that really defines that. And then what kind of products do you have to sell? And what kind of promotion you're doing towards that, and your pricing.
Hmm.
So that's your placement. And I will say that for me personally, getting into or setting up North Star has been a journey of making a different lifestyle choice, if you will. I think I got to a point where I was done with making work the center of my life and then building my life around it, and I decided to flip it, where whatever work I do is one part of my life, and it helps me fulfill my larger purpose. Um, and I think that also informs uh, my business model to some extent. Like what is it that I'm okay with? What is it that I'm not okay with?
Yeah.
Having those conversations with myself. And I totally agree with you about the need for staying motivated, because at the end of the day you're your own boss, and that that has its flip sides too. I totally agree with you. And peer coaching has helped me a lot in that. So whenever I feel like, okay, I think I'm straying a bit, I that's the advantage of being in a coach
Yeah.
community and one a specialist coach area. So absolutely. So what are some things that the couple of strategies that you have adopted in acquiring clients?
Okay. See, contrary to popular perceptions, when somebody gets into a coach training, becomes a certified coach, starts doing well, it's not that the market will start coming to us. I mean, that's a myth which has to be busted, right? Even when today I meet clients or speak to clients, the concept of coaching is still not completely known. So
Yep.
people tend to associate coaching with training as a corrective mechanism, as a
Yeah.
development tool, or probably they combine coaching, counseling, mentoring in different ways, right?
Yeah.
It's about getting the awareness around coaching, and I think that's the first step in terms of acquiring clients. Unless it's a very large organization who have got exposed to coaching, who have coaches around, it's very rare to find that kind of organization. And those large organizations, like you mentioned earlier, also they have their own L&D department. Maybe they have signed coaches in the panel. It's not easy to break through. If you go across, like you mentioned about small and medium enterprises, the concept of coaching is new. So it is to demystify what is coaching, is what is critical. When you talk about acquisition of clients, there are a couple of steps I do, right? One is you try and get an entry through a non-coaching assignment. For example,
Mm.
a lot of concepts you learn in coaching, right? How to be a better listener, how to be empathetic, how to increase curiosity, self-awareness, anything. You can pick up a topic and then tell them that I'll do a free seminar for you, or I'll have
Mm.
a free session with your group, right? That is what will get them to know you better. And you slowly introduce coaching, how it makes a difference. The second approach is you always tell them that the first maybe a coaching journey for 1 or 2 employees, I'll give it pro bono. You look at the feedback,
Mm.
look at how it impacts them, look at how it helps you as an organization, and then we get into long-term tie-up. So it's not about jumping initially and saying that let's sign in a contract for 6 months, because for
Yep.
them it's new, and for them to have a
Yeah.
confidence, we need to show our confidence saying that yes, I'm willing to do it pro bono for probably 2 months, 3 months. You get a buy-in for that. Maybe the business is more secure for longer term. So I think these
Yeah.
are two. I'm still experimenting in terms of how it works. But interesting to know your view, because you have been behind the small and medium enterprises, combining consulting and coaching. So what is your strategy for acquiring clients?
Uh, it's still work in progress. And so I evaluate every year. So it's great we are having this conversation at this time of year. So December is usually when I pause and reflect and figure out what I want to do differently the next year.
Yeah.
Uh, I I do want to. So first of all, I've always wanted to be a virtual business. So this was because I started my practice even before COVID started. So I've always wanted to be able to support different people in different geographies. And one of my personal mm, purpose, if you will, is to make people development accessible, access to opportunity, improving that around the world. That's something that's I'm very committed to. And so I understand that for me to do that, I need to have enough revenue generated in US dollars so that I can then subsidize my work in rest of the world. So that's one foundational aspect of my revenue model, if you will. So anyway, so I've always wanted to be a virtual business, which meant that my marketing is all through social media. I'm conservative when it comes to social media. So my main platform is LinkedIn and YouTube. So I do put out a lot of video content. And then that's been my strategy in terms of where my presence is. So it's online. The other thing is I approach it from a relationship building standpoint, and that's something I'm still working on because the companies I used to work for before, um, I, I I'm not in a position that I can go back because their L&D strategies are different. So me as an individual, I'm not able to influence a change in that. So I had to really go out and build new contacts and new lines of opportunities for business. And so that's something I've been doing over the past 4 years. So for me, it is about identifying, doing a lot of research and identifying the companies that I would like to work with, and then figuring out who in my network either works there or has connections there. It's evolved. My approach has evolved. So in the earlier stages of when I started, so like 2020, 2021, so I completed my PCC level training at Acharya, and then I'm credentialed at the ACC level. And when I used the pro bono coaching when I first started to work with individuals. And my strategy at that point in time was if individuals are able to see the impact of coaching, and if they are able to spread the word within their companies, and if they are in decision-making roles, then that was one strategy that I adopted. I had not so much success with it. But what has been successful for me is building, using the content marketing approach where understanding who it is that I want to serve and why I am the best person to serve them and what problems for them am I solving. Keep focusing on that and building my content around that. And that's a journey that I think I'm more fervently on since the middle of this year when I worked with a marketing coach myself. And that has been an eye-opening exercise to start with, identify the problem that you are the best person to solve. And that starts with the belief that you too have something to offer in a what seems to be a crowded market. Right. So what is the sole reason why you are the best person to solve whatever problem that you're looking at? And then keep your messaging consistent around that. And then of course do your outbound outreach as well. And the one success that I had from participating in engagements or in opportunities that were outside of my comfort zone, like public speaking, has been that somebody saw something and they liked it and they reached out to me. We connected. We had a great relationship. They're a friend and mentor now, and then they had an opportunity that became my client. So for me, I think figuring out what are your 3 or 4 core strengths, and then being consistent about putting yourself out there in those 3 or 4 areas so that when there's a recall for people. So now when they think of Meenakshi, I want them to think about, oh, this is mid-level leadership coaching. So being clear about that, and then opportunities will come. So I haven't had a silver bullet or any sort of magic around that. It's a whole
So,
lot of grunt work.
yeah, I think an interesting fact which comes to mind when I speak to you about acquiring clients also is we support stickiness of clients, right?
Mhm.
The biggest lead generators are happy and satisfied clients. If
Yes,
clients see a value in your coaching, they're more than happy to recommend you to someone else, and that becomes
absolutely.
very important. Number one. Number two, I did talk about the two or three buckets or two or three segments of coaches. Even for people like me, who's a full-time coach, I can't do training because it's a very different skill set. I can't imagine myself standing for 8 hours. I know it's a lot of effort, a lot of skill set required. But I'm actively exploring to see that if I go to a client, how do I offer a complete package? There's an
Yeah,
executive coaching, there's something on training, there is probably something on consulting, as well as something into more specialized areas like transaction analysis, right? Or change management.
yep,
Now, the effect of that is when you go to a client with a large offering, you may still have your niche in terms of coaching as a niche, but then the client is able to see a wider offering. And if he or she doesn't choose one, there's a possibility that something else might come up, and tomorrow it lead you back into coaching, right? So that's something which I guess many of us can consider in terms of trying and riding on each of this. Uh, One of my favorite topics is how do you maximize products per client? Because if a client has
mm,
one product, there's an increased chance that he or she will come back to you for something more which you offer rather than go somewhere else, right? The exit for the client becomes that much more difficult because he or she is already in touch with you for some offering. That's something as well which works well.
yes, yes. And I want to add to that really quick. And this is where building your own network, and I know that's kind of like the next topic that we were going to touch upon. Building your own network of trusted coaches, consultants, and trainers who you trust to do uh, work that's aligned to your values and how you would deliver to a client is important, because and that's been important to me, because I'm very clear that I don't want to take on employees. I always want to be a solopreneur, because I value my flexibility around that a lot. That's important to me. And so I always see North Star as being this one person enterprise. However, if the opportunity is big enough, then I know that I have these 2, 3 coaches that I can approach, and that they would be willing to work with me, and that I trust and respect the quality of the work that they do. And so a lot of time goes into building these relationships, and I cannot emphasize the importance of that enough, to build relationships not just with your customers, but also or potential clients, existing clients, but also within your network, so that you know that there is this group of 4 or 5 people that you can tap into when a big enough opportunity presents itself. And being upfront, and this is the thing, agreements not only in coaching but also with your network of what is the revenue sharing agreement. Having some baselines already in place. Do not wait till the opportunity presents itself, because then you find yourself in a tight spot. But having the agreement upfront, uh, I have like a finder fee agreement with a couple of coaches, because their networks are larger, and I'm one of the coaches on their team, if you will. So investing in that, investing the time in that is important. And there was one other thing that escaped my brain. It'll come back. Back to you, Giridhar.
Yeah, no, I think you said about a couple of coaches in touch with, right? I think that also works very well, especially if you are linked to a very senior coach. They may not have the appetite and time to pick up multiple projects, and some of them may not be very senior leaders. They may want to focus on the CXO level of people. So it is always good to be. It's similar to every profession, right? Whether it's a doctor or a dentist or even a lawyer, they tend to have associates with them. So always good to partner with them to try and see how you can leverage on their strength and their footprint, try and maximize your opportunities.
Yes, and I'm loving the riff here, because the next thing that came up for me as you said that is identifying people in your network who are similar but different. Meaning, their offerings are adjacent to yours. So you're able to fill the supply chain, if you will, fulfill that. So for example, one of my dearest friends and collaborators is an HR consultant, and she runs her own HR consultancy. And she's also focused on small and medium businesses. So we stay in touch so that if and when there's an opportunity for her to say, hey, you know what? I think you will benefit from this, and here's someone that can do that coaching and leadership development work for you. She can introduce me to her clients. So diversify, just like you want to diversify your sources of income, diversify your network as well, so that you are, you'll become like a scrum team, a cross-functional team. And that way it's easier to collaborate also with folks that don't do the exact same kind of work that you do, because then sharing becomes easier, and the pie only gets bigger.
Yeah. No, I know I think one area of interest many people on this webinar would be keen on is on pricing, right?
Yes,
Uh,
and I saw a question around that too.
yeah, is it? Okay. So in terms
Yeah.
of, I think it's a common question every coach, right? How much do they price? How do they arrive at a
Yeah.
pricing strategy, right?
Yeah.
In your experience, what has worked for you and what do you do?
Yes, pricing has been, I had to receive a lot of coaching myself to get on the pricing thing. So the one thing that I learned by attending another webinar, actually, it is Deepali Nair. She is with IBM. She's like an executive with IBM. She talked about, and she has a sales background, and she's new to coach. I mean, she's unfamiliar with coaching. That's not her thing. But she was addressing a bunch of coaches. And one thing that she said is that the law of diminishing returns does not work in coaching because it's a life skill. So every client that you work with, you are knowingly, unknowingly helping them be a coach as a leader. That's what you're doing. And so her thing to us was, do not discount coaching packages. Do not say that, oh, if you do 3 sessions, it's this much. If you do 6 sessions, I'll give you a discount. That just went off like a bulb for me. And I've stuck with that since then. So the more the number of sessions, the more expensive my coaching package is. Because that's how much more I'm helping you as a coach by staying on longer in the relationship. So that's the first thing I would say. Avoid discounting your rates. And this is something I did right from the beginning. I took the Coacharia template for coaching agreements. And what I did was, even when I was doing pro bono coaching, I would put my full rate in the contract, and then add a line saying this is being adjusted to $0. So whoever did pro bono coaching, they knew what they were getting for free. How do you price? If you Google as a consultant how to price, there's a whole bunch of things that you'll get. I will say that pricing is geography specific. That's what I've learned. So as a solopreneur, as an owner of an LLC in the US, I am responsible for certain taxes, that self-employment tax that I have to pay, which is different in India. In India, you have GST. So figure out what your local tax rules are and include that in your pricing, and then include your prep time in pricing. So when you do hourly pricing, I would say do package pricing first. Don't multiply hourly pricing by number of sessions. Think about what is it that you're delivering and what is a fair price for that. And it's going to feel like you're making it up, and that's okay. I want to say one more thing. This is a mistake I made because as a solopreneur, when I was pitching my services to individuals, I felt like I was asking for money for myself. And that was the biggest barrier for me to price my services. It's a fair trade. So you're giving them something in return. The money is for that. It's not for you. And they are choosing to be in that engagement. So yes, of course, they're paying you directly, but they're paying you for the service. And do not price it based on their affordability. That's the other mistake I made. I would sit and think, oh, because I would have these conversations, oh, if that's too much, then I can discount it. And then I stop myself from doing that. You are worth what you're worth, know your worth, and you will find the people. So this goes back to who you will attract the right kind of people when you gain the confidence in yourself. So those were some big mistakes I made, and I struggled with them for the first 2, 3 years of my practice.
Yeah, a couple of approaches which I try and work on, Meenakshi, is one, typically coaching sessions last a journey. It's not a one-off session. Very rarely do you get into a one-off session for a particular issue. That's very different. But when you tie up with somebody individual organization, it's almost always for a series of sessions, or a duration of a session, right? It's a 3 month, 6 months journey. The,
Yes.
the the strategy I always use is how do you price a journey, a coaching journey, right? So you price the coaching journey depending upon what the needs are, what level of seniority employees, what are the expectations from the coaching sessions. And most often executive coaching, you have a sponsor coming back and articulating what to the change they desire from a coaching session. So depending upon that, you look at seniority, look at what the challenges are, how long the journey is, how frequent the interactions will be. And outside of those formal coaching sessions are expected to be available to the client, depending on mutually convenient time for a 15-minute chat on the phone or a 10-minute session just to clear something which is up in the mind, right? I think that the pricing works in terms of how much effort you put in. The second important thing to realize is, are you doing a virtual coaching or a face-to-face? Because almost always in a face-to-face coaching, one, we spend time to move to a client's place.
Yeah, yeah.
There are times where you're kept waiting 15 minutes because the client is busy in a meeting, right? So you have to factor in those waiting times as well. So the pricing for a virtual and a face-to-face has to be different. Because face-to-face, you're spending more time. You probably end up waiting sometimes for a client who is stuck in a
Yes.
meeting, etc. So time is money, right? And you price it accordingly, virtual versus face-to-face. And the third thing is when somebody starts off coaching, I think it's a discovery somebody has to do. It's not that my price will work for you or your price will work for me, right? What is the value I'm giving and how much will a client be happy paying off? You talked affordability. I think more affordability, it is what values a client see in me. And
Mm-hmm.
that is something we need to judge over a period of time. Because as we get more confident as coaches and we are more confident in addressing what the needs of client are, that's when we start really looking at the pricing in terms of what we want to offer. Right? It
Yeah.
also comes back with the kind of experience we have. There are coaches who probably have an X number of years of experience and then start off as a coach. There's somebody who's not even certified, but then who has a wealth of experience and they might be charging higher, right?
Yes.
So it all depends upon the value you're able to afford to a client. And it's actually a price discovery. I don't think there's any rocket science where you can very clearly go back and say that per hour coaching is X amount of rupees. So it varies per individual. It varies upon what value you offer and what the client perceives in you as a value.
Yes, yes to all of that. And it is a discovery. It is a discovery. And it is important to start from a place of confidence that you have the ability. I'll never forget what my first Coacharya trainer said to us in our first class, Karen Delk, when I started my training. She said, as of today, you all are coaches. Go out and tell the world that you are a coach. And that really set me on that path of thinking of myself as a coach. Yes, I'm in training, I'm a learner coach, but I'm a coach nonetheless. And so believing in our own ability to be of service to others and understanding, starting from there, I think is the key. And there was another question here, and I wanted to touch upon that as well. Yes, I think the pricing strategy needs to be different based on who the buyer is. Is the individual or the group, are they the buyer or is the organization the buyer? I'll touch upon that a little bit later as well. But that has definitely defined it's caused me to shift in my focus as well. In the tech industry, for example, a lot of companies have started offering coaching internally. So then, how willing or how motivated will people be to pay for it by themselves? And the way I've gotten around that is by trying to then repackage my offering as a group coaching offering, so with a bit of training thrown in as well. So there are different ways you can get around that. never under, so include, sorry, just one thing, include in terms of pricing, include all of your expenses. And that includes your business expenses, your insurance, your taxes, your prep time, all of that in addition to the actual work that you're going to deliver. And then one last thing, instead of discounting, offer a value add. Do not underestimate, do not bring the price down once you set the price. Because then it's like you're at a flea market.
Yeah, and finally, it's not about the time you spend at 1 hour. It's about the experience you carry, what you've learned. It's about the training you have gone through. So, I mean, all these add up to what you're going to charge a client. So it's very easy for somebody to come back and say, you're spending 1 hour, you're charging so much, right? But it's
Yes.
not only at 1 hour. It's the number of hours and days and years you have spent in training to be a coach. I think that's the value which you are selling. It's not that 1 hour journey.
Spot on. And that's true for consultants as well. They say, right, when you bring in a consultant, you're not paying for the time that they're bringing, you're paying for all the 30, 40 years of experience that they bring, right? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some questions around pricing in the chat. There's a question from Neil Giridhar, and that's for you. What's a good price in Indian market to start with as far as individual is concerned?
I think, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. It's about there's no fixed pricing. India, coaching is still in nascent form. Awareness of coaching is not very high. So if you're looking at a long-term partnership with a client, I think you'll really have to tread this path with a lot more research and a lot more care, because you can't afford to quote very low. You can't afford to quote very high. The problem when you quote low is that price sticks. So, business grows, you're stuck with that price, and there's very little you can do to move around, right? An indicator for you is to try and see, if you have the data, what other coaches charge and what is your value add vis-a-vis what others do. I mean, that can be barometer for you to measure up to in terms of how much you can price, right? Again, it's an individual pricing strategy, but each of us would have a minimum pricing per coaching session or per coaching journey, and need to fix that. And this will only come through your own discovery. So it's very difficult to point to a number. People could charge X, could charge 10X. But what is that number in between? I think that's something we'll have to arrive at basis the comfort what we have, basis the feedback a client gives, basis what value a person sees in us.
Yeah, yeah. And it's similar in the US. So I've seen regular coaching anywhere from so if you are signed up with like the better ups of the world, you as a coach can expect to earn anywhere from $80 to 100 or 120 US dollars for your one-on-one coaching conversation. And as an individual, you can, so someone like me as a solopreneur can charge anywhere from $150, $175 all the way up to $200, $250 for one session. And for executive coaching in the US, it's anywhere, it's a wild west. So it's $500 an hour all the way up to $1,000 an hour a session. Sorry. So it's all over the place. And in my 4 years of trying to do this, what I've learned is exactly what Giridhar said, is understanding what is the value that you bring, the self-awareness around that, and the confidence of saying, okay, this is the price tag I'm going to put, and then sticking with it. And in my case, never ever discount a price, especially in the individual coaching conversations. And I bill for packages and not for individual sessions. I do have the option to say, so if you go to my website, you will find that there's an option for price point for just having one conversation. And I clearly say this is for people who want to experience what coaching is like. Yeah. But that's not what I sell to clients, because you need to do at least 3 or 4 conversations to get the full benefit of the experience.
Yeah, but what I would like to add is one of the key determinants to pricing is the individual one coaches and the sponsor if it's an organization, right?
Yeah.
Because the more value they see in you, the easier it is to price your offering. Because if the feedback is very strong, very positive, you will almost always feel that you will get through with what your quote is. But if the experience is not great, then there's always a challenge. So therefore, when you're coaching people, when you're entering into private organizations, be be confident and be absolutely sure in terms of what skill sets you are expecting to bring into the sessions to build. Because that's finally your brand, and that's what is going to help you in terms of pricing future sessions as well with other clients.
Absolutely. And also remember that organizations, just like individuals, will want to bargain, right? So there will be negotiation, and be prepared for that, and have your rationale ready. And then again, my personal strategy has been to offer something in addition. So I think through the entire process in an organizational context, starting with uh, a opening meeting
Yeah.
all the way to a feedback meeting, the entire loop. And I include everything in my proposal and say, okay, these are things I'm going to charge for, and these are things I don't charge for. So they can see very clearly the time that I'm already giving to them, and I use that as a point to negotiate. Yeah.
Like there's one
And
by Madhushmita, sorry, it says this pricing change is experience and years spent industry. As you said, one might even have to start with pro bono sessions. You want to answer that, Meenakshi?
is it in the Q&A section?
It's in the Q&A. Yeah, it's in the Q&A.
Oh, so does pricing change with experience in years spent in the industry? As you said, one might have had to start with pro bono sessions. Yes and no. Yeah, I know that's not the answer we like, but uh, for me personally, it's been more about sorting myself out in my head, getting out of my own way when I figured out my pricing strategy. That was my biggest challenge. So pro bono sessions are great. So I want to make a point here. Pro bono sessions don't have to be all for nothing. Use your pro bono sessions to get testimonials, video testimonials if possible. And that's something I learned a bit late in the game. And if you actually look up ICF, the coachingfederation.org, you will find a client testimonial consent form. Download it and send it to all your clients as part of the coaching agreement. So number one, when you do pro bono coaching, make sure you still have the coaching agreement in place. Use the Coach Area template, ICF as a template, include the consent form in it. And that way, your pro bono coaching is also of some value to you, the testimonial. And get very specific. Can I use your name? Can I use your photo? Can I use your full name? Can I use your title? Can I use your company name? Because all these things matter, right? So be very specific in the consent you get. And by the way, when I talk about consent, I personally like to use the European framework, GDPR, the Global Data Protection piece, as a standard. So that covers you around the world because they are the most stringent. So use the GDPR language, and you can research, you can just Google GDPR language and you'll get it. You'll get the form. Use that. So even though yes, it's advisable, especially if you don't have any contacts. So for me, I didn't have any contacts in the industry. That's where I started. I started with the professional women's networking group that I was a part of, and those were my first clients, pro bono clients. And then I reached out to them to get testimonials. I did it late. So when you do pro bono, make sure you get the testimonials. Pricing is really, like Girdhar said, it's about the value you bring in the now. And of course, it's going to be based a lot on the experience that you bring. But that alone is not the only criterion. It's what is the value that you bring in your current state as a coach or a consultant, whatever it may be. That's what determines the value. And again, we live in a capitalist world. So what is the market willing to pay you? And you're going to find that out by adjusting it. So again, my final recommendation is, if you think, if your client is struggling to pay or not happy with the price point, I would keep the price point the same and add something. So I have done like, okay, I'll offer you 4 conversations instead of 3, but I'm not bringing down my price. So that way they feel like they've gotten a little bit more, right? And that way my price remains the same, advertised wherever, because you can make adjustments on a case-by-case basis. I hope that helps.
I think there's one more question by Ram, which talks about anchoring bias. Does it impact pricing with the client? right?
I don't know what anchoring bias is.
I
Do
think
you?
it's yeah, anchoring price is more about how the decisions are referenced by referenced or rather influenced by any of by reference point, which can be which could be somebody else who's quoted a price or past coaching experiences the client has where he has certain pricing in mind.
Uh,
So yes and no, because when we end up meeting a client, they will have a certain number in mind, which is a reference point, right? Again, it's about what you bring in, what's the experience you have, what's your past credentials in terms of references from industry, who can give you good references. I think it boils down. It's for us to bust that anchoring bias if you're very confident about what you're offering, and we'll always work around that, provided we know what we're talking about in our offerings.
yes, and the way to counter that is, price points. It's also based on what is the problem we are trying to solve, or what is the context for that engagement. So
Yeah.
it may be the same program, but then when I say program, I mean it could be a group coaching or an individual coaching. It could be the same type of engagement. So, for example, if a client wants to figure out their goal is to get promoted within the next year, I'm just making it up. That versus, oh, I want to make a career pivot. I want to get into this new industry. Those are kind of two different contexts. So the number of sessions required, the type of assessment I'll use with them, they all vary, right? So you can't, that's my counterpoint to the anchoring bias based on my understanding of it.
Yeah. The other question which a lot of people ask me, I know it's not asked here, is about how do you decide which area of coaching are you focusing on? What's your niche? What's your
Niche.
specialization in what you're trying to offer, right? I mean, so how do you work around that, Meenakshi?
Oh, so for me, my niche evolved.
Mhm.
When I started, um, like I said, I wanted to work with organizations particularly on agile transformations.
Yeah,
And then Coacharya happened, and then I switched to working with individuals. And I was like, oh, this is a great way to create impact.
right, right.
Then the niche really evolved because I am a member and a volunteer with a professional women's organization called Lean in Agile. They are co-founded by a couple of women of Indian descent, and we are a professional development organization, membership organization for women who in tech and women in agile. And it so happened that I joined them the same year that I started Coacharya, and so I offered my pro bono coaching services as part of my training to this community. And there were at least 4 or 5 women that I worked with as clients through that, and that's when my niche evolved because I realized that I was of I was able to offer my best to women in tech who, like me, spoke other languages in addition to English. Um, Most of them were expats, and they were all sort of mid to senior level project managers, agile coaches, scrum masters, you name it. And I found that it just worked, and they were so happy and they gained so much, and I was able to witness the transformation. And that's when the whole messy middle started forming for me. So it's taken me 4 years to now say, oh, I'm all about unpacking leadership at the messy middle. And
Mhm.
my input from what I have learned from this experience is that if you know your niche right out the gate, good for you. I mean,
Yeah,
there are people I know who know that. Um, but if you don't give it time, let your customers inform you, let your clients inform you what your niche is. And one tactical thing is this actually I learned from Sudha Krishnan, who's a Kocharya alum and a dear friend. Um, Use technology like a Menti poll or something, and send it to people closest to in your network, asking them to describe you with what are the top 5 words that come to mind if they describe you, and use that word cloud to inform who you are, how others perceive you to be, let me put it that way, and then marry the two. So that's been my sort of jungle gym.
Yeah, I know close to the end of the program, but I think
Oh,
a quick input from my side on the niche is from a context of business and coaching, right? I think somebody starting off coaching with the intention of making career of that, and a lot of people ask me this question, right? Start off a relatively larger, broad base offering what you have, right? Just link back to what doctors do. Somebody finishing an MBBS, being an MSN surgeon, cannot start becoming a heart surgeon the next day, right? They need hours of practice. They need to actually specialize in that before they form a niche. Similarly, in coaching, don't narrow down your clientele by focusing on a niche, right? Broad base it. I think there will come a stage when you will have a lot of clients. You'll have an option to choose, because that's when then you can really start working on focusing on niche. But like Meenakshi said, that if you have revenue streams coming in from other areas and you really want to go behind your passion, following a niche, then by all means try and create one and try and follow that.
absolutely. And I'm sorry, I did not realize you are already at time. My apologies.
Yeah.
Do you think it is a good time to pause for now?
I would say I want to make sure that we got most of the questions.
Yeah, I haven't missed anything.
So I'm wondering what if we could answer it in a blog, or maybe we could have a sequel to this conversation.
Yeah, we can.
Definitely let us know if that is something you all want. And thank you, Meenakshi and Giridhar, for joining us today
Pleasure.
and sharing all the wealth of knowledge that you have. I mean, everyone's thanking us here, so I'm sure there is a lot that the attendees are taking back. And to everyone here right now, thank you so much for being here. And we all hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful 2023 and the holiday season, and you slow down and pick up and use all these amazing learnings that you have in your coaching businesses this year and next. So have a wonderful time, and thank you all. Anything you both want to say before we close the session?
No, I think we have tried to get from our experiences, Nupur, both Meenakshi and I. I'm sure that a lot of unanswered questions, like you said, if you're putting up a blog, happy to contribute to try and answer that. But this is something which is evolving and very dynamic, right? And as we proceed, it'll keep on changing. But I'm sure there'll be further opportunities with us, with other coaches, etc., who will share their own views. And people look forward to picking up from that as well. Yeah. Thank you for having us on the show.
Yes, absolutely. And I just wanted to add to that, saying feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Nupur, if you're going to do any follow-up, then I have a series of conversations that I've done overall on solopreneurship, not just being a coach. And they're on my YouTube channel, and I'm happy to share those links. If you're going to do a follow-up, then you can include those. And the one thing I want to leave everyone with is seek out your own networks and set up your sort of conversations like this. Do it in your own little pods, if you will, and that's very helpful. And I keep saying the pie is large enough. It just keeps getting larger the more number of coaches come into the market. So it's not. So let's all. My wish for everyone is to start 2024 with an abundance mindset. There's more of us needed, and there's a lot of work to be done for even more of us. So if I would encourage you to create your own little pods, to share information amongst each other, especially on pricing. I've learned so much from my fellow coaches on that, and I would not have been able to share even half of what I did without the circles that support me. So that's my wish for everyone. Happy New Year and a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.